So dark.
Can you hear us?
Do I want to? This screen is so dark. I can't even see to press the buttons okay or something
We're
else.
working on it, Bev, don't worry.
I went up there.
Don't worry, I worry.
Oh, she can't hear us.
Yeah.
I
Everything
can
was-
hear you. I don't want to, but I can hear you.
Okay, I gotta go to my computer.
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Don't yell. Are you talking about anything important yet or just chatting?
Just chatting.
Okay. It's coming up.
There.
You know, if you're in your home and you're watching the selectmen's meeting flying through this
It's
thing.
fading in and out. I'll press OK.
And I got the other little one that's only a year old. We're mom.
I've been waiting for months.
Well, Bev, we can see ourselves on the screen, but we
Oh,
can't see.
thank God. I'm here.
I know earlier. That's the thing. So. And you make sure your little video button at the bottom left corner is not blocked off with a red line and all that stuff, right?
If you want to make a motion where we don't do this dissertation.
Yeah,
The opening of the
yes,
news.
because there's no audience.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have to do that for, the work sessions?
Workshop, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there public meetings?
Why is it though, and all of you go to other meetings, why is it we're the only ones that do it?
I don't know.
There are certain personalities that might be in the audience that need to hear it.
Yeah, it is true. We do get to say, zip
But
it.
the thing is, we've got to hold them to, please state your name, and no one ever does.
Yeah.
And don't speak unless spoken to
You don't have the floor.
for a planning session. But I don't know, every board's supposed to do it. Unless you're going in executive session, we're supposed to have the same kind of deal, I thought.
No, I mean, I've been at the selectmen's meetings. I was at the zoning board of appeals the other day. They didn't open up their meetings with this.
Huh.
And it looks like.
Well, I imagine the Maine Municipal Association would encourage them to do other.
Well,
Guys.
the ZBA has bylaws. And they're the only ones of all the boards, committees, commissions that have bylaws. So they have a script already built into the bylaws.
Just, did you get the screen thing on?
Yeah. Did.
So you're good to go, you even got, oh, look, look at that, were my instructions good?
Yeah, I wasn't really familiar. It's been a while since I've done
Very good, no.
that, but yeah.
Bev isn't on, she's.
Bev's
can't
on.
see Bev.
Oh, shit, well. That.
And she can't
because-
see us.
You know why I think Bev's on? I think she's got
She was on earlier.
well, it says her camera's on now, right? And then it says she's muted, so. I don't know what's going on, hold on, let's see, ask to unmute.
Bev, can you still hear us?
She can't respond because she's muted. I can't kick her out and let her join back in, because if I do, then she won't be able to get back in. So she might want to exit and then come back in.
That's asking too much, I think.
Bev, if you can hear us, exit the meeting and then come back in.
Now, is she getting the same printout there that we're getting?
What do you mean?
If she's muted, but if she's, is she?
She
still
could
getting
see
that?
if she's got her closed captions on, I have no idea,
Oh, okay.
so. Because if I had to guess, that looks almost like one of those, like she put the shutter over her laptop and that's where you can't see it, but. Cause it says her camera's on.
And it's not blocked off with a red line.
If you wanna.
No, only the mute is.
Wanna open.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Have you already done that one? How was that?
Well, yeah, we decided not to do the dissertation. Yeah. I heard that already. Okay, so the meeting's open.
Yeah, so I think she's got like the shade shut on her thing, because if she had it off, then it would be lined through it like that just did when I did it.
The shade.
She'll text us if she needs something.
The little privacy shade thing over the camera. You know, on the laptop, slide it to the right and
I
it
don't have
blocks
one
the
of those.
camera on, you don't have one of those, so, alright. But I asked her to unmute. But she didn't hit that button. Space bar, Bev, unmutes too, I think.
Eric, before you leave, I got a question.
Want to
for you.
call her
Yeah.
up?
Can we put sidewalks under ordinance?
What do you mean? Can you put on like sidewalk cleaning?
Yeah, for an ordinance for, yeah, for the town, that they should be doing, if there are sidewalks in front of their house, it's their responsibility.
Yeah, I think that goes into like the traffic ordinance, but I'm not positive off the top of my head.
I was just looking at this, if it's, so we don't have to mess with this every 6 months, it comes up.
I don't know about that one, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I don't know how popular that is though.
well, I missed
Yeah.
the last meeting, and that's, they said you put a price tag to it.
Well, we're trying to put a price tag to it, but like, okay, we're getting locked into that. But we haven't got it yet.
Okay,
Are we ready to start?
all set?
I'm trying to see if Bev can,
Sorry, I was dealing with the crisis du jour. So.
Awesome. Thank you.
hello,
How are you? Tropical outside today, so that's good.
I don't know, can you, you're in Zoom, can you? Can you look at the bottom left corner?
Oh,
There
she
you are.
is.
You're back.
All right,
Now-
no, now it should
Type
be.
in, I can't see anything. Oh, shut up, Penny. I can't see. Fuck.
We can hear you now.
Say that? Did I say that?
Do we hear?
Yeah.
Cause I don't
can
know,
hear her.
'cause it's all in my. Okay.
Does she do me, Penny, I hope?
Bev, I'm gonna hang up now that you're back.
Yeah, but I don't know if she can hear us right now, that's the weird thing.
I can.
Good.
I
Or
can
she-
hear you.
She can,
Yes,
can you see us?
I did a minute ago. Now you're drowning out. The screen is going from bright to dark to bright.
You have sunlight shining in right directly on you. That may be part of the problem.
Yeah, it is. You got.
I tried this in the other room as well. I'll move it. Just go ahead. I'm sure it's,
You want me to lead this?
Sure.
Okay. All right, the first item on the agenda is permit fees. Now, this is one where I'm looking for planning board input on this because first and foremost, let's lead in with, you all know,
Is all this stuff gonna be in the warrant for the meeting?
there'll probably just be one warrant article on whether or not the town approves the zoning ordinance changes, not each individual line item, because we could be, we're talking about a separate warrant article for a one-word change.
Yeah, how does it, how does the public find out all about all this stuff?
Well, that's where we're gonna have to have public hearings. You gotta have,
Okay.
one, a public hearing by the planning board, and two, the select board have to do a public hearing before they can publish the warrant, and so all of this will be discussed at least twice,
Okay.
but I would guess more than that, because we're gonna have to go back through this at least one more time, if not twice. So we kept the meetings, even though we have no packages that require site plan review, I kept the meetings on the agenda for the month of March, so that we can go back through this a couple more times if required. Okay? So first and foremost, leading in, you know, the planning board owns the zoning ordinance. You guys own the revisions to it. Ultimately, the select board does because they set the warrant, but if the planning board doesn't concur with any of the changes that I have made, the select board can take it directly to the public, but they would need a 2/3 vote to be able to change the zoning ordinance, which they're probably not gonna do. So, you know, end of the day, they need your recommendation. So the fee schedule, it obviously needs to be updated. The fee schedule has not been updated, from what I can figure out, since 2009.
I
Obviously,
bet that's right.
what's that, Bev?
I'm sure that's correct.
Yeah,
I
so,
have an original booklet and nothing's been touched, Sean. Let's go for it.
so some of the things that are on the agenda are not, we're not ready for prime time because the comp plan was just published. The implementation committee for the comp plan has yet to
The
be
what committee? That group?
implementation committee has yet to be appointed.
Implement.
So they like, you know, I think I had on there farmers markets and bed and breakfasts, you know. I firmly believe that there should be no prohibition against bed and breakfasts off neck, or even on neck if you've got the space, but, that would be something that we would need, in my opinion, to have the implementation committee recommend to the planning board so that then you could enact it, so we would comport with the new comp plan. So we're just not ready for prime time on that. But the permit fees. So I went back and I pulled all of the CPIUs in the Northeast region since 2011. And you know, the numbers change year over year, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but we're basically up 40% in cost since 2011. So I then looked at about 10 different communities around Maine. And obviously, as things go north out of Portland, oftentimes they're more expensive down in the Portland area, but here we know we're more expensive. So going in, my thought process was, and I didn't change any of this in the ordinance that I sent out to you all yet, because I wanted to, we'll get to the philosophical billing here or fee structure here in a second. But going in, you got your base fee. For a building permit, your base fee is $25. And then what's in the ordinance right now is scale on the cost of the project, right? So my going in position was that the base fee across the board, both site plan review, both base fee for building permits, demolition permits, all need to double. Right now, we got a $25 base fee for a building permit. I'd like to take that to $50. For planning board site plan review, it's $100 administrative fee. That needs to go to $200. Same thing with administrative reviews, ZBA, and that goes from $100 to $200, et cetera, et cetera. That's just the base fee. But where the real fees are in these building permits is that additional cost based upon the cost of the project. And we have that also, that table in there where it's $180 a square foot for, you know, like a single family residential on the first floor is $180 a square foot. And that's how you figure out what you can either figure it up by the cost of the project, and that is based upon what the contractor tells me is the cost of the project. Or you can go, if we can impose a higher fee, if it is in that table, you know, $180 a square foot makes it a higher cost. Is that clear? Is that understandable?
Is it the greater of?
What's that?
Is it the
It's the
greater of?
greater of. Yeah, so we can impose and charge more if it is in that building table. The problem is that contractors lowball. Okay, and that's, or they find something,
Necessarily.
or the property owner,
Sean,
I'd like a little bit, budget over here or whatever, and
That's,
Sean,
yeah,
the cost is not local unless you count Penobscot. The higher end scale is going to be reflected by the larger companies in Blue Hill and elsewhere. But if you want a cheap job, then you stay local. So that's a reason. Well, they hire bigger the job. These people are going to go to Hughes or somebody other than local.
right.
But typically,
What point was I making?
no matter who it is, very often they bid low in order to get the job, even the Hugheses of the world. And then they increase by the add-ons that the homeowner, and so they know that there'll be ads.
Yeah,
And that's just a standard.
and that's my issue is that very routinely, I'd say probably 6 to 7 times a year, I have to notice, which I don't notice all of them, but I have to notice that a contractor is building something extra onto a house, putting an extra dormer in, doing an extra this, whatever, which obviously increases the cost. But does a contractor ever come back and say, hey, I need to update my building permit? That never happens, okay? So I printed up a fee schedule and I'll print up more copies. The one I really like is Auburn's. And their additional fee is based upon square footage times 25 cents. Unless it, 20, square footage times 35 cents. And that way, I don't get into, oh, you built an extra dormer, you did the whatever, you got a set fee, $200 for a building permit, $50 for a building permit. And instead of us going through and blinding ourselves yearly on whatever that cost is gonna be, that it just becomes, what's your gross square footage on the first floor? Because that's gross square footage by floor. What's that gross square footage times a number, and that's your fee. Okay, now what I owe you all is, we gotta have some intellectual to be able to justify this to the town. You gotta have some intellectual underpinning here. So that's why I pulled the CPIU numbers so that we could say, okay, building costs have increased by X amount. We know this in the Northeast region since this has been updated. So that kind of one building block of why we're increasing the fees now. But secondarily is this fee structure that hasn't been updated. I don't like it because, it's $180 a square foot for the first floor of a single family residential home. And then it's like $100 a square, or $100 a square foot for the second floor. And it's a different number for a garage, and it's a different number for an unfinished space. Let's,
Question,
yeah, Beth.
Sean, where are these prices posted?
In Article 11 fees,
I know, but if you don't go to the book, is there any paper that could be printed that says to the contractor, if you do this, it's going to be an add-on, it costs this much? Is there a booklet or anything that can be put together for this purpose, or is it necessary?
well, you can do anything with, the right amount of time and money, Bev, but what I'm saying is I'd like to get out of that and just kind of make it simpler to where you're charging a
Set?
set square footage times a number price.
Okay.
So I don't care what they do inside that space. It's gonna be kind of an equal square footage times price, or times cost, or times a number.
So no matter what floor. Because it very easily, I mean, the big costs are the kitchens and the baths. And if that's occurring on, if you still do it floor by floor and the big expenses on the second floor, not on the first, you've lost.
So what I was gonna do is I was going to apply this methodology to all of the building permits over the last, say, 2 years. And then compare and contrast that against the fee that we charged for those permits, and then see where the math, leads us. What I'm thinking I'll find is that this fee structure that's here is up by that 40 or 50% that we're looking for. Okay, and that way, if inflation cools and it's 2-3% next year, whatever, then maybe this goes from 25 cents a square foot to 30 cents a square foot, but it's a very simple change in the zoning ordinance instead of having to refigure what construction cost estimation is. Because that's the way we're aligned right now in the zoning ordinance. Does that make sense?
You're taking it out of the hands of the contractor and basically put it in our hands. And just saying, okay, you're building a 1,200 square foot house. This is what it is.
1,200 square foot, 2 stories, that's going to be by story, bam, bam, here's your cost. And I don't care if it's 180 square feet for you, it's 400 square feet or $400 a square foot for you. Our fee structure is gonna reflect current, basically pricing of the CPIU. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So that's kind of what I'm looking for, is just kind of take it, like I said, that if they build an extra dormer, I don't care. Because it's gross square footage. And that's between them and that property owner, not the town having to catch them that they're overbuilding on their permit. Make sense?
Mhm.
So that's what I owe you. I owe you this fee structure methodology contrasted against the building permits that we've already done over the last couple of years, and see where that math leads us. And then if it's 25 cents a square foot, or maybe it needs to be 30 cents a square foot, maybe it needs to be 35, either one, it's easy math, and we can put it down on paper. Okay? But the key is whatever's in that price per square foot needs to be reflective in the CPIU. Actually, not CPIU, the inflation rate for the Northeast region, it's not CPIU. Over that 2009 to 2025 timeframe.
Yeah, we're catching up.
We're catching up.
Yeah.
Now, we're still gonna have a base.
Still be a base fee. There will still be a base fee. The second thing that I'd like to do is on the fee structure. Right now, I think if it's beneath $5,000, it doesn't require a fee. And I'd like to put in there, it'd be $2,500, and I'd also like to, even if there's no fee, you still have to file a building permit, because we need to know, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but we need to know about interior renovations. And the reason why we need to know is, property owner in this town right now, by our zoning ordinance, could do $200,000 of interior renovation, and as long as they don't change the design, we don't have the first earthly idea about it. Well, if you put 200,000 into a property, the valuation goes up,
Yeah, we're giving a property tax.
and we might not catch that for 4 years.
Yep.
So, and we'll get through all that, but first things first, the next time we meet, I will get you a new fee schedule based on this methodology and how it compares to what we've been doing, and get your thoughts on that before we can go final on it. Because I really want to see what those numbers tell us with regards to what we've been doing over the last couple of years, okay? We've done roughly 110 permits over the last couple of years. I'll just do, I'm not gonna do every, because, there's outliers like the Academy's Pier project, that's not helpful. So it'll be just like, single family residential or additions is what I'll.
How do we charge the academy for something like that, or we don't? because it's state.
No, right now, so no, because it's a fee, it's not a tax, they're non-taxable, but it's a fee, so they have to pay it.
Mhm.
The way that is charged is, it is $1, any project over $1 million is $1 for every, $1 for every $1,000 of, the cost of the project. So the Academy's peer project, that was a $80,000 check to the town.
Mhm.
He basically paid for me last year and this year and the next year, that one project.
That was what I was thinking about mentioning too, is there's a savings, by simplifying. How much time do you spend combing through blueprints, driving around to make sure they're accurate? I mean, that's not a good use of time.
No, again, some projects require that, and they're going to
Sure.
require that. And especially if somebody has a code question and I have to look up and I have to, cross-reference that against the prints there, the elevations that they give me. But what I'm saying is that's not, those are the outliers. The normal routine is Jim Menard comes in, wants to put an addition on his house, 800 square feet, 2 stories. Okay, that should be simple.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't be going back over time and saying, hey, well, Jim, you put a dormer on that thing.
Right.
I don't care
Right.
at this point, right? As long as it doesn't increase the footprint.
Sure.
So,
I don't see tremendous value in it being complicated. I don't think the town benefits from making it hard.
so,
Yeah, but Jim, over the years, I've been here 30-some years, and over the years, not all, but some of our contractors have really taken advantage of coming in with cost factors for building, which has reduced different things that we've charged them for over the years.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If
Yeah,
you just
we
make
can-
it, you can't
We can
game
make it
it.
simple.
Right.
That'd be the best bet in the world, because we've had some over the years really cause us a lot of headaches.
Yeah. Just keep it
And we
so it
haven't
can't
had-
be gamed.
And until now, we really haven't had a full-time CEO, right? Because you've had positions that you're doing as town manager and CEO.
9, actually,
Yeah.
but.
So I think this would work out.
You're the dog walker too, I noticed.
Yeah. When wife's out of town, I'm the dog walker. So anyway, or not out of town, but she's out of town right now, but. So I owe you that, but I really, before we meet next time, I'm gonna send you guys some documents. But I really want you to think about philosophically whether or not you like the fee schedule we have right now, because I can go in to a construction estimating program and figure out what the latest and greatest cost is and update that table, and we can go with that. But that requires 40 or 50 changes in the zoning ordinance. Each line item is gonna have to be changed instead of just saying something simple like this, which is 25 cents a square foot.
So as you review what we did before, if you could let us know if you sense that contractors have not been. You do go back and look at something after it's completed, just as a sense of where we've been.
Well, here's the thing.
In terms of,
The fault is on the town. Because we haven't updated our fee schedule.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the contractors are paying what we tell them to pay. But we're woefully out of date. So, I don't really fault them, but what I do fault them for is if they know that they're got $150,000 project and they come in here and tell us it's $100,000 project, that's lowballing. Maybe they are, well, I'll save a couple thousand on my permitting fees and they just pocket it, or whatever, I don't know, because they're obviously telling the property owner, hey, we estimate a permitting fee is gonna be, $4,000, whatever. And then they only charged $1,500 by us, maybe that's profit, I don't know. don't really care. Other than, you know, that's between them and the property owner. What I do care about though is that we're so far out of date and I think it's overly complicated for this. So we'll print the schedule up for you, and from a philosophical, that's what I'm looking to go to is a price per square foot and doubling the base fees. Okay?
Yeah.
And I don't even know if doubling is gonna be enough. But we know that based upon, you know, I gotta add a couple of years here, but we're roughly in the 40% range up from 2011.
Do you sense that other people have over time kept raising rent of the rates?
Oh, fees?
Yeah, fees, yeah, and which we haven't done.
We have
So,
not done. The difference is, you know, like Auburn, I pulled Auburn. They've got a full-time planning staff and a full-time CEO, you know, I looked at, Bangor, Brewer, Saco, Auburn, you know, I purposely looked for people that I knew had full-time planning and full-time CEOs, to do this. And to look at this, and I looked at all of their fee schedules. I absolutely loathed Bucksports. It's just overly complicated. You know, for like a level 1 review, it's this. For a level 1.5 review, it's this, and for a level 1.75, it's this. It's like it made my head hurt. So I'm looking to simplify and understanding that, you know, we're budgeting more for me next year, but we're budgeting only for 20 hours a week. And I've been averaging about 22.5, and that's just to get things done. So, you know, whatever we come up with, I'm looking to be able to make sure that my position remains revenue neutral. That makes sense?
The tax rate.
Now, Sean, since you're in this position now, do you go out and check when they're building anything?
It depends.
Mhm.
You know, if a new foundation is going in for an addition or by the zoning ordinance. And by state law, we do not have to do any building inspections. Other than if a new foundation is going down, I need to go out and inspect the foundation. And largely that's just to make sure that if Jim Bernard comes in and says, I'm putting a foundation in. And it's gonna be 20 feet off of his lot lines, I have to go out and make sure that it's 20 feet off the lot line. It's largely for the setbacks. But while every contractor is supposed to build to the Maine Uniform Building and Energy Code, if you're beneath 4,000 in population, you do not have to have building inspectors, nor do I have to enforce the code. Unless somebody tells me of a violation. Yeah,
Now, I'm looking back, we built our house ourselves. I came from New Jersey. You sneeze, you get an inspection from, coming from out of Boston.
Boston.
I mean, you blink your eyes, you got an inspector there looking.
yeah,
I actually had to plead with the people here and said, I'm gonna be gone for the weekend or for the next week. Go take a look at my framing. If there's a problem with it, please let me know. Right, and when I came back, there was nothing on the paper I left.
Maine is such a rural state and the overwhelming majority of all communities can't afford to have those types of building inspector shops, et cetera, electrical, et cetera. There is a movement in the CEO world to have state licensing for contractors. Because there's no way we could afford to have a single person that's code enforcement, LPI, and building inspector, electrical inspector, and all the stuff that LPI being plumbing, all the stuff that you're used to down in Jersey, unless we bump taxes up significantly. I mean, across this really rural state, right? So plumbers are licensed by the state of Maine, and if a plumber doesn't do things to code, they can lose their license. Electrical, same there. Solid fuels, same there. So we need propane or whatever. The one shortfall there though is contractors, just general contractors. They do not have to be licensed by the state of Maine.
You know, anybody can pick up a hammer and say, I'm a contractor.
Yep, I joke all the time. I can become a contractor in this state tomorrow if somebody was stupid enough to hire me. And build any way I wanted to. And unless I get sued, because MUBEC is the law of the land. So that contractor is supposed to be building to code. But if they don't, it becomes a civil issue between the property owner and that contractor. Not, town is actually hold harmless because we're beneath 4,000 in population. Okay? All right, so that is the fee schedule. Expect an email from me. I'll get to it tomorrow. I'll be cross-referencing these numbers just to make sure that 25 cents a square foot is indeed where we want to be. And then provide a recommendation out to you guys on that.
And give us a little background on how we currently do it, just as a boilerplate, just where we are, how that's formulated, and then.
Oh, how, so you'd like, how out
Past and future,
yeah,
okay,
okay.
just so we got it.
And then the rest of these items are not in order to your agenda. But first and foremost, if you go down to look at your land use table, and you'll see highlighted there aquaculture. Okay, well, that is one, it's confusing on how things can be not applicable in the rural district and not applicable in village 1, 2, or 3, but applicable in the shoreline zone, considering we're almost an island. You know, by the way, we got a lot of shoreline zone that runs up the shore road. And it's called the shore road. So I don't know how we can say that the planning board can approve aquaculture in the shoreland overlay when it's not applicable in rural village 1, village 2, or village 3. So that leads to, what's that?
Isn't there like a little borderline along there?
There is.
So you can't have aquaculture in the middle of Fort George, you know.
Right.
So,
You're talking the border along the shoreland zone, 250 feet off the high water mark?
well, it's just pointing out where it is.
Well, it used to be. Now you can have salmon
Marine,
circulating.
maritime, in front of the ship. I don't know what resource protection, those are the forts. So.
Now, resource protection can be either archaeological or source water protection. So, you know, we have resource protection. Oh, it can also be the Bog Brook wetlands, you know, the square wetlands. A lot of that's in resource protection as well. But not really pertains to aquaculture, but the point being is there's a movement afoot across the state to have aquaculture moratoriums. And this became a thing for me to pay attention to when I found out that there was a state entity that were actually marketing to developers areas of towns without talking to the towns. We were on there. Ram Island and Holbrook Island, who are in Castine, were sent out to developers to say, yeah, take a look at these places for aquaculture. And I was like, oh, holy crap, maybe we ought to pay attention to this. Because I thought that Castine was very safe from aquaculture when it can't be done in the rural zone, it can't be done in village 1, 2, or 3, which to me makes that shoreland zone saying the planning board can approve an aquaculture development null and void if it's not applicable, meaning a no. So what I'm saying is we should probably change those not applicables in village 1, 2, 3, and rural to no's.
Yep.
But isn't this based on where you actually can do agriculture? You can't do agriculture in all those other areas. Those are on the land, so it's really not applicable. But shoreline zone, I'm looking at the map now, it runs all around the edge of Castine, from what I can tell from this map.
Can you not do
Yeah.
aquaculture nowadays on land?
I think it
Is
would be
it-
pretty
is it
tough to
called
do too. The only
aquaculture?
place I can think of is the federal salmon farm over at Alamoosic, where they have onshore pens for the salmon.
And they're looking to, I
Yeah.
mean,
In Bucksport, they were, the mill there, they were
they're
actually.
looking.
They're gonna be up on land?
on
Yes,
land.
yes,
Okay, then I guess I'm not up.
but is it aquaculture if it's on land?
Not by the definition in the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, it's a different kind of,
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm thinking of oysters, for instance. and-
yeah.
Well, there's,
Bev's got her hand.
go ahead,
Question?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Castine, this whole area has one aquifer. How do other areas justify, we can't, I probably, but if you, do the standards for aquaculture growing, big word, differ depending on where it's located in the state? Because years ago, when we were doing the pesticide committee, we had a professional group come in, test our aquaculture, and we had one. We didn't have layers of water source. We have one. Now, does that become important as we, and now instead of cars, they're have a aqua farm and a trailer, for God's sake. How does the rest of the state judge the basis of extracting water when there's only one or two sources? I may make sense.
Yes, but the aquifer that we have, that we've been using, for our drinking water, right, goes through treatment and so forth. So you're saying the aquifer would be filling up?
No,
what
there's
the-
one source. If you have layers of water sources, Castine has one.
Are you conflating the aquifer with aquaculture, Bev?
I'm thinking that way, as in, is there any place else in the state that has aqua culture? Is that right? Uh, what do you call it when you grow vegetables in water? They do it in
hydroponics.
yeah, hydroponic, and they're doing it in a trailer. Is that pulling in an odd source or more water from our drinking aquifer? Then we should question it?
Well, you're talking about source of the water for a freshwater
Yeah,
Yeah,
aquifer.
yeah,
that's a separate
That's
question.
another matter
That's a separate
entirely.
question.
it
This
is.
This is more like, mussel farms or
Ah,
sea,
in the
See-
shoreline.
or,
Okay. Okay,
would go on in this salt water
So
around
Yes.
us.
okay, I'm
there
Just
have been.
wanted to
been-
clarify, but
Yeah.
I'm concerned, not terribly, but concerned about a car place going to aqua gardening. Fine. Go on. You're good.
Oh. I think you're talking about the Nitzkowski hydroponic.
Whatever, if whatever it's called. It was
So I just received.
one time to
I had
put
to chase.
up in order to build or store cars. now it's something else. That hasn't come back before us, has it?
No, and it's not gonna need to, because
Why?
They went after Bucksport. and
yeah,
rented
because
garages.
they've canceled the garage.
Right.
And they've kept the hydroponic farm where they grow lettuce to give to charity. So that's a
I don't
structural,
care who they give it to. It's a water source,
it's their
And it-
water, their well, Bev,
yeah?
off neck. So not on the aquifer. So, well, it's on an aquifer, but it's not on the aquifer for Castine. So, but anyway, that
What?
is not aquaculture
Of
though.
course it is.
It's
Oh,
hydroponics.
we can discuss this later if they ever come before us.
Well, again, Bev, they're not going to,
Oh,
because there's no need for it.
oh,
So, anyway, um. So that, there's a group in the state that has been pushing moratoriums on aquaculture up and down the coast. And the question is whether or not we want to make a zoning ordinance change. I believe that the select board is in favor of, limiting aquaculture in Castine. But then that needs a zoning ordinance change and for that to be able to take place, because as I see it, we've got a conflict here between our rural village 1, village 2, and village 3 shoreland overlay. And we should just change those PBs to no.
So, question, is it possible that Don's point earlier that this would never have historically been feasible in any of these areas? And the reason it says not applicable when the intent was pretty much no in the first place?
I think you're probably right.
All right, so, but changing it isn't changing it, it's really just correcting.
It's clarifying.
Yeah,
Yes, agree.
But when we look at it, like Holbrook, that would be an ideal place for an aquaculture farm. Either on the far side, and this side it would mess up with the harbor going in and out.
Well, and that's where the reason why you'd have to do it completely from the water because there's no road network necessarily that would get you to, most of these large outfits that are looking to do aquaculture are looking for a pier,
Yeah.
a road, harvest, load, haul away. So I don't think it's really feasible for Holbrook or Ram Island, but I've been wrong before and, why risk it if we don't, as a community, want it?
The word you use here is on Holbrook or Ram Islands, and do you mean that to also
That's
include
just
around?
across from the mine. You really want to do vegetables across from the mine?
Not vegetables.
But then we get into this whole, and this has been a debate in Maine, up and down the coast, riparian rights
Yep.
and all that stuff, and then it gets real messy when you start talking about those things. So,
yeah, who gets to harvest the seaweed?
I'm gonna guess, because I'm not an expert on aquaculture by any stretch of the imagination, but if someone were to want to develop and put something out, I believe Holbrook is owned by Maine Coast Heritage Trust or Blue Hill Heritage Trust, I can't remember which.
Yeah.
And then Ram Island is privately owned. So let's say it's the owner of Ram Island decides, you know what, I'm gonna get an
Ram is
aquaculture.
part of Castine.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's privately owned. If I remember correctly. No?
I don't think so. I was just looking at a map.
I think Ram is owned by Castine,
Yeah,
no?
If it is, I will have to look into that, but point being is
No,
if someone
Used to think so, John.
would put an aquaculture outfit out there, they would have to get a submerged lands lease from the state as well.
Yeah,
Um,
I should hope so.
I'm sorry, Bev, go ahead.
No, I just said it had to be approved by the state, and I said, and I hope so.
Oh, yeah. And they would get input before they could issue a submerged lands lease, they would get input from the town, et cetera. But again, I'm just asking if the planning board wants to change those PBs to nos
And the NAs to know.
and the NAs to nos.
I'd be for it. I've just been reading about aquaculture is changing and they have found more and more problems with, specifically salmon, farming
Or large scale.
and large scale and in fact, moving toward, raising fish on land, because of the problems with.
That's what I heard, salmon, online salmon farm, you need a big hill.
Yeah, aren't we looking, and I think you're going in that direction, aren't we looking at a different definition of the aquaculture of what we knew and now? If it's changing to land-based,
I'm all for making this all no's, because, and then I don't know if it's aquaculture, if it's on land or not. I don't know about that definition, but I do know that there are problems with aquaculture as it is in seawater now. But the other, I just don't know about seaweed. Is that just, taking it, or is it actually being seeded?
I don't know,
I
I'd
don't
have to
know
look
enough
at our
about how
definition.
that happens, and does that require anything being put into the seabed in order to, I don't know what that requires, so,
I thought it was just harvesting.
Yeah,
It's just
I don't think it's
harvesting it,
cultivation, I think they're just
yeah, I
taking
don't,
it.
so, but I,
don't know who
for
would bother.
me, it
There's
would
enough
be
of it.
no,
But
personally.
effectively, that's putting a moratorium in place on aquaculture in Castine.
Yeah.
So if, again, something to think about. This is a work session, can't make decisions. It'd be a recommendation from the planning board to the select board, and the select board would make a call on whether that goes on the warrant or not.
And a moratorium can always be changed down the road.
It absolutely
so,
can.
it's just-
And overturned.
Yeah,
Okay, so the next thing is and we talked about this is the setback footnote for the dimensional requirements, it's section 5.5 in the commercial district, maritime activity and commercial district. If you remember, I was having a conundrum in that I had been applying it this way, Jimmy Goodson had been applying it this way, Dale Abernathy had been applying it this way, where if somebody builds a foot away from your lot line in 18 whatever, 1800, then your setback then becomes, from instead of 10 feet, it becomes a foot in the commercial district, applying it to all 4 lot lines. And I don't think that's what was intended. I think it was intended that if Tom and I are neighbors in the commercial district and your house is 10 feet or 10 inches off of, a foot off of my lot line, then I can build a foot off of yours. Not a foot off of yours and Jim's and everywhere else. Because then you have a cascading effect all the way through the commercial district where everybody can build wherever they want, right? So this was my attempt here in that footnote to, 10 feet or no less than the abutting property owner with the least setback. This footnote only applies on the side of the lot with the abutter encroachment. And that way you limit it to
Ron,
that.
What
place.
example are you thinking of?
It's really down the hill from town hall, but Scott Vogel's property is the one that is, he's got his home is 19 inches off of the lot line. You go down the hill from there and they're all crammed together, and if they could all build basically to that same standard instead of, it's not a problem that is emergent now. It's a thinking that let's just not have it be a problem. and let's solve it, because I don't think that that was the intent. To say that everybody can build, you know,
Right.
salt metal property is right up against Hank DeRot's and right, you know, so does that mean that Hank can build all the way to his back lot line?
If it's, is it because it's grandfathered
Yeah.
that it's
Partly,
inconsistent?
this is how these buildings get built.
Yeah,
It's
so
absolutely.
Last century.
Yeah.
It's how the buildings were, it's how the buildings were built, so they were grandfathered when the zoning ordinance, when we got
So
zoning.
they're non-compliant because of. them
So they're
being there.
legal non-conforming, but then we put this into the zoning ordinance to say, well, if somebody's, you know, a foot off of your lot line, you can build up to a foot off of theirs. I think that's probably what the intent was, because,
but it shouldn't be.
well, it shouldn't be that they could build a foot off of every lot.
No,
I mean,
that's-
Yeah, cause one guy's close, you can't make everybody.
I live in that situation. I shouldn't be, well, maybe I could put an ancillary dwelling unit in my backyard, but I shouldn't, you know, as long as it comply with the setbacks.
And that's what I'm saying, nobody is coming in here saying, I wanna build a foot off of the lot line or 2 feet off the lot line or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's not, yeah,
Yeah,
it's not a problem.
yeah,
However, we also, on net Castine was designated as the high density growth area by the state.
Mhm.
You can put up to 4 accessory dwelling units onto a lot if it's an empty lot now. You know, so. I don't want this to become a problem, so I'm just saying, let's make one simple additional sentence. If that is clear, the way I wrote that we could do that and move on.
Now, is most of it's 10 feet or setback inside?
No, 10 feet in Village 1 in the commercial district, 15 feet in Village 2, 20 feet in Village 3, 30 feet in rural. Rural
We're
district.
like 30, 35 out by us.
Yeah.
So if I read this correctly, the first sentence is the same as the original first sentence. You just added the clarification, this footnote only applies to the side.
Yes.
Okay.
That is correct. I tried to combine it, just make it one sentence, but it just kept coming out wonky. So I was like, okay, let's just make this 2 sentences.
Yeah.
It's, you know. All right, moving on. We're now down to. I think we're in the performance standards on accessory dwelling units. Oh, no, I got one small change on exempted signs, and that's just, you know, landscapers put signs out all the time, and so signs identifying contractors on the construction or landscaping side, I just put or landscaping. You know, somebody saying, hey, work done by Joe Schmo Landscaping, you can put that in your front lawn, and it can be done while the work is being done, and then they should be taking it away. So it's just adding landscaping to that.
and that's the contractor's responsibility for the removal,
Yes,
as we do
Well,
have left.
it's the responsibility of the contractor, or it's Sean Blodgett when he happens to be driving around and seeing a sign that's been there too long, I just pick it up and. I got a whole stack of them.
Now, the commercial
For your new
signs,
business.
we limit to what, 8 square feet?
What's that?
Our commercial signs are 8 square feet?
6, aren't they?
Is this 6?
No, for home occupations, for 3x2 for home occupations, and then for commercial signs, you can have up to 18 square feet.
Really?
Yeah. 2 signs, 18 square feet, sandwich board counting as 1 sign, each side is, both sides are only count as 1, so. You know, most of the businesses have a sandwich board, which 18 square feet total, if I remember correctly. So. Don't quote me on any of this, because I didn't memorize it. Okay, if you guys are good with that, let's move down to section 6.33 accessory dwelling units. And I added a number 5 there. And that is that. One, this is not an emergent problem because we have not seen a huge accessory dwelling unit build boom. But if we did have someone that comes in and says, I want to put 4 accessory dwelling units on a lot in and around Latour, Medaka, downhill towards Perkins Street, out here towards, uh, Hatch Cove, our system wouldn't handle it.
No. And we're already behind in maintenance in the system anyway.
Yes, the system just would not handle it. So, we had, had to get the engineers looking at, our favorite property on Latour because, the pipes are undersized. Sewer's good over there. We upsized the sewer, but the water, the water pressure does not meet, water pressure meets standards right now because there's not a whole lot of year-round population that lives over there. And when the summer folks come in, the students are generally gone, so we're good now. But if we were to have one developer put 4 units onto a lot in some of those places, the system would be,
Overwhelmed.
I don't want to call it overwhelmed. Everybody would pay because you turn on your tap and instead of having, the normal, flow,
How about your shower turns off?
you're not gonna have it, right?
That would be worse.
Correct me if I'm wrong on this one. To me, an accessory dwelling unit would be only if you already had a house on the property. So now you're saying that they can come in and just build 4 accessory?
Yeah, if it's an empty lot, they can build more units in the high density growth area, up to 2.5 times the density that our local zoning ordinance allows. So, and I believe it's up to 4, but I'd have to look at that again, because I haven't crossed that bridge yet, so it's like, I would.
Yeah, no,
relook at
that's
the
why I'm
law.
asking, because I thought you had to have, I'd come to you and say, okay, I want to build a garage with an apartment above it. That to me would be an accessory dwelling to my residence. I didn't realize that they just could come in here and say, okay, I'm gonna do 4 accessories. I mean, a lot of land.
Well, you build 1 principal structure and 3 accessories.
Okay, but there's gotta be
You just call it
you
like,
call it a principal.
yeah, you're like, well, that one of the 4 is the principal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
And that's
so,
because of the new state.
Yeah.
Allowance.
so I would like to, and this comports with the state law. Because they basically did everything that they could to say you can't say no to anything. But this is something that is realistic and I think comports with the state law that we can review, do a technical review.
Sure.
And say, our system cannot handle this development.
Right.
Now, we could get into impact fees if we wanted to. Where you'd start laying over, if you wanted to do this, there'd be an impact fee of $1 million to upgrade our system or whatever it would be. But we're not prepared for that. So I would just like to send this through Oliver Associates, see what the flow is, make sure that any development can be supported.
Well, if we don't do it, we're gonna end up paying $1 million because we're gonna have to upgrade the system ourselves.
That is correct. Or everybody pays. I mean, everybody would have reduced flow.
Right, which I'm not sure would be tolerated that well.
Okay. And then we'll get down to. Again, I owe you some follow-up documentation on fees, but go down to code enforcement officer permits. First thing is on number 2, I just added but not limited to, because that's one of those things where if it's not written explicitly that you need a permit for this, people have argued to saying, well, it's not written there, you can't make me even though it's in a definition or even though it's referenced someplace else in the zoning ordinance. So I just put but not limited to. Now.
What was the number again, Sean? What
I'm
was
sorry, I didn't
under
understand.
code enforcement? What was the number?
It is number 8.1A2. I would like to tag, but not limited to on the end of that sentence.
Okay,
Secondarily, you go down to, I'm looking at A, B, my B would be, is not there right now. This is the interior renovations where I look at two ways we can capture interior renovation work to ensure that our tax assessors know to look for it. One would be above a square footage, and the second would be above a certain cost. In this exemplar that I pulled down from Auburn, they have a $2,400 cost. I was thinking more along the lines of 300 square feet and $3,000 as a, if you're doing 300 square feet, which is what is that? That's
10 or 30.
yeah, 10 by 30 area of your house. Okay, maybe that's too large, or maybe it's too small, I don't know, but if you're just renovating a certain portion of your house, I don't think the town needs to get in your business all the time. But if you're renovating more than 300 square feet, you're probably doing a pretty large renovation in your home.
I like the square footage number, but I can tell you, if I had to replace a bathtub and fixtures, 3,000 would barely cover it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I might be like
Bump that up.
5,000, 10,000.
Yeah, you see here, my first thought was 10.
Yeah,
10,000 in project costs. So that was the first, that's why I've got XX, comma, XXX, because I was like, maybe 10, I'm not sure.
10 feels right to me, just given like typical handyman. I mean, I literally had the inside of the house painted. And I swear to God, it cost me $5,000. And that was like 6 rooms. So.
Who'd you have painted?
Just, yeah, he did an immaculate job. He just happened to do it with a Chinese fan brush to
Yeah.
get it.
So. I don't have a number here, but maybe 300 square foot, $10,000.
That feels right to me.
Okay,
Apologies, I gotta go.
not a problem. I will get all this updated and sent out to you, Don, as long as,
Thank you.
No, I built a bookshelf too.
I would think this should really be the basement, if you converted your basement into the living space.
Oh, yeah.
well, that's already covered.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
finishing an unfinished space already requires a permit.
Okay.
But if you are just renovating, it doesn't. And
So putting in a new shower, a new tub, which is a renovation,
unless you're changing the design, if you're changing the design, then it requires a permit, but you
Right.
can do interior renovations all the live long day and not require a permit. And again, I use Scott Vogel because he and I have had a lot of conversations about it, is that, and he was actually the one that was advocating for this because he's like, hey, I put a lot of money into the Four Flags building and renovated every apartment in that building over COVID over time. And he's like, the value of the building has went up exponentially, but not exponentially, but it's went up a great deal because of all the work that they've done. But we don't capture that, but every 4 years. And so, I'd like to start getting into the interior renovations and permitting those.
and one thing we talked about was the interior demolition.
Yeah, and this is where I think where I was a little bit redundant. Because if we're requiring permits for interior renovations, I don't know that I need interior demolition anymore.
Well, we were talking about the safety issue. If you demolish a bearing wall inadvertently, and you then, I mean, it's a little bit like what Scott did by dividing up his work into 2 pieces. If you do the demo and then you don't know what you're gonna do with that open space that you just.
So I
created.
did add that, and let's get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
I did add that a little further down, but I only added it like a comma and interior renovations, or interior demolition.
As long as the demolition's in there, cause just for a safety thing, you can, I mean, I know of situations where someone went to actually close up a doorway in a bearing wall, and in removing the door frame, the whole wall started to go.
Mhm.
So, you know, it's just structurally, demolition can be dangerous.
So I think I got to that. I think I captured that a little further down.
Okay,
So I added an F. I don't know if you got the copy. Oh, they didn't print up very well. I added underneath construction of porches and decks, I added ground or roof mounted installation of solar power arrays. I've probably,
it's on here.
oh, it's on there?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I've probably talked to every solar contractor in the state and they all say, well, do you guys require permits? Well, in my view, it is a addition to a structure just like any other. Cause it's something you're hanging on the outside of the structure. There are eccentricities to them, and we've got a solar array going on a house down here that they want to run the power conduit through an abandoned chimney. Nothing to say they can't. There's no code that says they can't. From a reasonable man theory, I want to make sure that we're permitting that so that we make sure that there's a deeded restriction that that chimney can never be used or the fire department gets called.
Yeah, and this is I found this out the other day. The site lights from the truck will charge the solar system. So even if we shut the power to the house off, if we hit those with water, we all get electrocuted. And that's just from the truck lights charging the solar panels. So I am all in favor of having a list.
So I have made sure that we permitted every solar array that I'm aware of in town. Even though it was not in our ordinance, but I could just go to our definition of a structure
Yeah.
and say, okay, you're adding an addition to your structure, so you require a permit. You're changing the design, so you require a permit. But I want to be explicit about it.
Is it possible to add battery-based storage systems? Because when those things go off,
No. And the reason being is that we do not have electrical inspectors, nor do we have, so if we don't have electrical inspectors, we can't do electrical permitting. Because who's inspecting it?
yeah,
I don't disagree with you.
yeah, no.
I understand because those things can be dangerous for responders.
Oh, yeah, they don't go out. You can't put them out. You just have to stand back and not breathe too much magnesium.
That's with like the Tesla and
Yeah.
the cars and stuff.
But I cannot do anything about that.
Any power that we can't shut off terrifies me when we go to fire.
So-
department.
But like I said, I agree with you.
But I see your point.
But I do pay specific attention to every solar array that goes in and ask the question of whether or not there's a battery. I think what we probably ought to do on that is get a list of all of the solar arrays with batteries in town and make sure that you all have that over at the station.
We went out with a voluntary fill out, which I'm sure you can imagine how many people filled it out. Basically, everybody in the department filled it out. I'm not sure anybody else did. So,
Okay, to your point, Penny, I will look at that again with regards to the interior
Yeah.
renovation.
I mean, I think it's just
I'm
one
loath,
word, you know.
I'm loath to do that though, because I think I've captured that in that other, but also if someone is not doing demo properly, that's again not necessarily a permitting issue, it's a civil issue between that contractor and
But
the
if it
property.
isn't the contractor, if the home, I mean,
The
so
homeowner.
Oh, is homeowner doing it?
So I've rented an under framed house here in town. And if someone thought they were doing something, you know, because already it's a very old building that was under framed, I'm just, you know, it's just, I know in the city, you know, the building failures when this stuff happens.
Yeah, let me look at that again, okay?
Yeah, that's.
I will take a note down there and look at that again. The next portion that I need to do some significant work on, but again, I told you what I'm gonna do here with the fees. And that's Article 11, so we blow past that.
did you cover number 3, parking areas, retaining walls, patios?
Oh, no, I'm gonna get to retaining walls. I put a definition in here of retaining walls. Our zoning ordinance previously has been completely silent on
Yeah.
retaining walls. but with all of the discussion we've had on drainage and changing of water courses, et cetera, I want to make sure that retaining walls, we cobbled together, or should I say, I cobbled together that retaining wall was synonymous with a fence. It is and it's not, but I can make a call on substantially similar uses, as can the planning board. So we did that, but I want to be explicit. So we put, and oh, by the way, patios is another thing I added here. A patio meets our structure definition. There's no question, meets the structure definition, as does a retaining wall. So if you're building a new structure on a property, you should be permitting that. However, it was not in that explicit list of things you need a permit for, so that I added patios, retaining walls to what you need a permit for.
So it just in the retaining wall, the, 7.3 and, B, in order to create the least potential for erosion development should be designed to fit the topography and soils of the site. Retaining walls actually, can change that, so, and it's with erosion and stuff, it's just, I mean, it's just a clarification, I think, of what a retaining wall is.
Yeah.
As opposed to a stone wall that sits like a fence.
Yeah, and that is a substantially similar, you're talking a peasant wall, is what they, call them, or you're just putting your cobblestones in a line and, you see them all over the place. Those are substantially similar to a fence.
Yeah.
Okay, whereas a retaining wall is actually
Holds land.
absolutely not.
Yeah, it's an
right?
engineer.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't think we got involved with anything, under 2 feet.
no, that's just the Historic Preservation Commission.
Oh, is that all it is? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but this does impact erosion and it does impact runoff and it,
Changes the water course.
yes. And it changes topography, essentially, so we just have to clarify what we mean.
Well, you would normally see a retaining wall anyway, because it's gonna change the grade by more than 6 inches. No matter what but that being said, a lot of people could argue, well, you don't need a permit for a retaining wall because it's not in your ordinance, and that's why I put it down there.
Yeah.
That and a patio. I've always required permits for patios, but Jimmy and Dale before me didn't. And
Is
so,
there a distinction between impervious and pervious patios?
no,
Okay,
even if you've got those pavers that the grass grows up through, by state law, those are considered impervious.
okay.
Even though they're not, they are permeable,
Yeah, like 50%.
but. So
What about gravel?
gravel is impervious.
Really?
Yes.
The weeds grow through it, so it's not completely impervious.
I know. So the next change was to essential services. I just added home generators to essential service. That is something that I have always held, that a home generator in coastal Maine, when we lose power half a dozen times a year, is an essential service. And again, heretofore, that has always been used as the substantially similar bar, in that, well, it's an essential service. So yes, you can put it within the setback. But we need to be explicit about it. That if you don't agree that it's an essential service in Maine, that's fine. If it's not an essential service, anyone that can't put a generator outside of the normal setback can't have a generator. And I look at that from a fire department standpoint, that I don't want them running around when we lose power and it's 2 degrees outside, checking on all the homes, because you got enough homes to check on that don't have power as it is. I think you're 28. Something like that. So,
I'll go with yes, I have no idea, but
yeah. It might be 28 people, but it was enough that you got enough to do. When trees are down and this power's out,
Cars are
that
sliding
you don't
through.
need to add more people to that. Then the last change that I put in here was a definition for retaining wall. A vertical or near vertical structure constructed of wood, concrete, or rock designed to retain soil up gradient from the base of the wall. That's definition comes directly from DEP. To
Somewhere else we have, Rick, I don't know. Somewhere, I don't know whether that was intended as, like a fence, a freestanding wall or a retaining wall. I mean, I think that the Pentagoet is,
there's this brick, but
and it retains.
it does, yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what?
So do we add?
Wood, concrete, brick, or rock.
Sorry, yeah.
No, that's fine.
Or, I mean, maybe just masonry, would be a catch-all.
Masonry or rock. So. Save. And that is all the changes that I have for this evening.
you skip the use non-conforming.
Oh, I did. That's all the way, yeah, that's all the way down.
Oh, there we go.
So this is for a singular issue, this use non-conforming. The hospital, which way predates the hospital, the clinic that way predates our zoning is commercial. And it sits, but it's zoned residential. Okay. So it's a legal non-conforming use. Would be the definition. It's like a non-conforming structure. However, they have periodically thought about putting, because they had a ward on the top floor. They actually had rooms for people to recover out there. And they have periodically talked about renovating those and turning them into apartments so that they could then offer free housing for traveling nurses, traveling doctors, physical therapists, et cetera, et cetera. They talked to me about it and I was like, I don't know if you can do that because it's a commercial structure and now you're putting apartments in there. So, in a non-conforming use. So with this sentence that I added here, other than the non-conforming use, which is the commercial aspect of the clinic, all other standards of the Castine ordinance shall apply to a lot with a non-conforming use, meaning you can put apartments there if they wanted to. But they have a very specific reason why they wanted to do that, and that was to be able to facilitate traveling nurses, traveling doctors, et cetera. You have something, Beth?
Pardon?
I thought you wanted to add something.
Bhutan was talking.
Oh, okay.
So
I had to answer him, otherwise he'd continue.
I understand.
So I can think of a case, I mean, I'd like the planning board to be able to review something like what you just described. Because I see a lot of benefit in having traveling nurses, because I know they have trouble staffing it. On the other hand, I can think of at least a couple other people who would take advantage of, oh, well, it's commercial, I'll just add more commercial, even though it should no longer be commercial. So balancing the kind of public good.
I'm not sure I understand what the second part of your statement.
We could limit it.
I say that as a legitimate question because Blue Hill is a block away. and to put in, I don't know what they want. I've seen the plans. It's beautiful, but I don't know the definition of how they're gonna, I know, honey. How they're gonna use it, because who would stay overnight or need to stay overnight? It's,
Okay.
but it's for later discussion.
In Ellsworth, who was living in a camper as a traveling nurse because she had, no place else to live. So I think there's a
No,
huge,
it's better. I know that case.
so,
And so this also, when there was a group that was contracted by Northern Light to kind of address what, that municipal officials thought was needed for all of their different clinics, et cetera. And she came through and I sat down with her for a couple hours. And one of the things that, I told her was, I think with the population as old as it is in Castine, that physical therapy would be something that would be very helpful for our clinic. And that was one of also the drivers, because there are tons of traveling physical therapists, hard to staff them. And you can drive to Blue Hill, of course. But again, this is a singular issue and it's not a hill to die on. It's like I don't know that there's a real reason for it, other than we really have an anomaly there with the clinic in a non-conforming use that I don't know what they could do. There was other things which were well, it was really just traveling nurses, traveling doctors, and physical therapy.
so if the intent was that it was medical in some form or another. So, I mean, maybe an office that a physical therapist could work out of. Would we then have to make the whole building commercial? I mean, or is it now, the whole building is?
Well, that's the thing, is it
Yeah.
predates our zoning, so
It's
it's
just,
already commercial.
yeah,
But we're zoned, basically our zoning ordinance is wrong in that it sits in a residential area. There's no
Yeah.
specific call out to make it institutional or, there's no specific call out for that one.
How does the inability to increase the non-conformity or prohibition against increasing the non-conformity?
But you're not, that's what I'm saying, is if it's a non-conforming use, it only applies to the non-conforming use, which is the commercial building in the residential neighborhood. So what you're saying there in effect is, if you wanted to turn a portion of your non-conforming use into residential, it's already zoned residential.
Right, okay,
but
so I may have
you
what's
wouldn't,
written.
but that would not, then you wouldn't have the option of them being able to use it for a non-residential medical use upstairs, like an office for a physical therapist.
I think they could use it if they chose to use it as offices for physical therapy or anything else, they could already do that because they're
Because
grandfathered
the whole
non-conforming
building is
use.
currently.
So is this intended to keep people who are grandfathers from abusing that grandfathering privilege? Or right?
Yes. Yes and no, but yes, for the most part.
And the reason when I'm trying to, when it's late, I'm a little foggy, so apologize if this is obvious to everybody but me. But I can think of at least one building that has commercial use. And the owner rumor is the owner has intended to expand that commercial use beyond at least a deed restriction. In an area that may in fact may be more residential than has been allowed. Okay, I'll just say it. Selling pizza out of the market up there, turning part of it into a pizza restaurant. Remember that whole
Yeah,
hullabaloo? which was deed restricted anyway.
It's deed restricted to a bakery, a gas station, or there's a third use. I can't remember what that use is. But, I think then you'd end up legally having to fight over what's a bakery, because pizzas
Right.
are baked.
Yeah, in bait, right, right.
You know,
Sit
so-
down versus stand up. I know there's
You know.
nuances, but I guess the idea, or there's not that this has happened or I have any indication that it will, but there's a garage on Court Street.
Yes,
That is a residential use,
so
residential
the
district.
difference there is, it's in the zoning ordinance that, if a non-conforming use ceases to be used in that non-conforming fashion for it's either a 1 year or an 18-month period, the non-conforming use expires.
Oh, okay.
So that's a non-issue.
So that, all right, so that would be a non-issue.
Yes, the manor is the one that, the Manor Inn is the one that I can think of, and I don't know if, Justin and, forget his wife's name.
Lynn,
Lynn, thank you. If Justin and Lynn have kept their, liquor license going, or, whatever. As long as they kept some tenuous thread to that non-conforming
Yeah.
use,
They
they
have,
can
Then they
reopen
have,
it as an inn.
Yeah.
If they haven't, then we would either have to deny them being able to be an inn again,
Right.
or we would have to get a variance.
right. And the variance comes from the planning board.
Variance goes to the zoning board of appeals.
Oh, okay.
So, but that's the one that I could think of that,
they have, I know, I was at the meeting that they.
So-
re-upped there, yeah.
If I read this, other than the
so it's
non,
good, because it keeps their options open.
yes, Bev? Are you waving goodbye?
Yes.
Okay,
How much longer are we going?
We're about done,
yeah,
so. you
Okay,
need to go.
I just need to know. Bhutan asks.
yeah, so, if I read this correctly. Other than the hospital, all other standards of the ordinance shall apply.
Which would mean that they could put. 2 apartments there. Without. That would be. I don't have to look at it, but I think it would be planning board reviewed, but they could put 2 apartments there,
Because it's a residential zone,
because it's residential.
got it, but they could not put. More hospital-y office type stuff. Up there,
No, they could that as well,
okay,
because it's already commercial,
got it,
And the commercial also, does that include the garage behind there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
the entire lot
Yes.
by our zoning ordinance is synonymous with. Property, which is synonymous with the structure,
okay,
so the structure and the lot. And a whole kit and caboodle there is a non-conforming use. So in my way of thinking, that non-conforming use goes from lot line to lot line. What I'm saying is if they wanted to do something
Conforming.
conforming, that we have something in the zoning ordinance which would allow them to do that.
oh, all right, got it, yes, I read it completely the opposite, I agree completely.
They
I
already
was
have an accessory dwelling, the garage.
We've had to use that garage, in fact, we're still using that garage.
But yeah, so that's the whole purpose of that,
Yeah.
is to say, other than the non-conforming use,
You're groovy,
you could do other things there if you wanted to.
yeah,
Um,
that are consistent with,
with the zoning ordinance, which would mean that you could put. Well, you could. put
whatever the math.
A principle, yeah, you can,
Yeah.
whatever the math says. Okay,
Motion to adjourn,
And
Motion to adjourn.
they'll need a building permit to put in kitchens and bathrooms to go with those.
building and plumbing, yes, and state fire marshal review. Thank you all for your time.
Thank
Sean,
you.
lock up the front door.
What's that?
Said
Thank you.
lock up the front door. I'm leaving. I'm gone.
We done?
Yep.
Yep.
Done.
Okay,
You're dismissed, Deb.
thank you. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
See you later.
Bhutan says hello.
Here.
Here's our boy.
Where it means is the cursor on this thing. There it
Oh, it's there. It's hiding. There you go.
How's he on the